Hi everyone, I'm Tessa Hurr. Thank you so much for having me. I am on the Data Activator team as a product manager. I mainly look over the modeling and trigger space, and prior to this, I was actually on the Power BI team for a few years, and so one of my favorite parts of the role was getting to go around to different user groups, such as your guys's, and be able to meet more of you, and also it's been really exciting to see how these user groups have also grown and evolved over time as well. And Ronnie, did you also want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hey, folks, I'm Ronnie. I've been on this journey with Data Activator for about 2 years now. So happy to be talking to you guys and listening to feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, and if you guys have any questions as we go along, Ronnie will also be on call to help answer any questions and hopefully also monitor the chat as well. Okay. So in terms of what we're going to chat about today, we're going to give you an overview of the product. We'll go into some different use cases that hopefully will get you to start thinking about how Data Activator might fit into your own organizations. We'll also do a couple of demos on, so you can see it in real time and see how things work with Data Activator to ground some of this knowledge that we'll be sharing with you in the actual product. And then we'll also have some time for Q&A to make sure that you get your questions answered as well. So just heading straight into the product overview, I'm going to start by setting the scene a little bit. So when we speak to people like yourselves, people who are part of the data community or are interested in getting more involved in data, we often hear that many organizations and people see a huge potential to get more value from their data. But we've also heard that these customers and people such as yourselves have tons of data. And when you consider the full potential of that data, many businesses are just at the tip of the iceberg. And there's an interest and a need to want to realize a competitive advantage of using all the data that you have available and be able to drive more timely action from your data. And you might also be wondering, what exactly do we mean by timely action? And what we mean is acting more proactively rather than reactively on the data that you have. So this might mean addressing small issues right away before they become big problems and being able to seize opportunities before your competitors do. And the challenge that we see with taking this kind of timely action is that it is one thing to act on high-level aggregate data about your business, but it is much harder to act at the level of an individual customer or store or region or device. And let's go through a few different examples of what that might mean. So if you're running a business, you'll need to collect intelligence about your business. And that may mean continually monitoring that intelligence to detect if there is a need to act upon it and then take the appropriate action. So let's say you are running a retail business, and we'll go through a few different examples of how that process might map onto some of your tasks in retail. So as this first example here, let's say that you're a retail business and you are looking at your daily sales. And if you detect a fall in your sales, then you might take a number of actions to address this, but one of them could be running some sort of marketing campaign. If you go to the next line around freezers, maybe you're a grocery store and you have food in your fridges and freezers. And to ensure food safety, you have to monitor that your freezers and your fridges are continuously at the same temperature. And if not, then you'll need to move the freezers to another fridge or make sure that they're stored at the correct temperature. And you can do this through your IoT thermometers that are installed in the freezers themselves. In another example, you can also look at your customer data, and you might have the goal of delivering good service to your customers. And so you want to continuously collect data on your customer experience, and this could involve monitoring a wide range of data sources and monitoring information like customer reviews or mining data from your transactions and website interactions, and even your in-store experiences. And if you want to be able to detect quickly if a customer has had a bad experience and act quickly to help retain that customer, that may be something that you're interested in. And this last example that we have here is around packages. So let's say you are delivering packages and you need to track data about the logistics of each package as it goes from warehouse to customer. Then let's say that there is an issue like a lost shipment. You want to be able to deal with that proactively before the customer calls you to complain. And so if we go down the list from stores down to our most recent example of packages, the scale and complexity of these examples increases. There's more data on more entities that needs to be acted on more quickly. And it's at this lower level that it becomes more challenging to see where that untapped potential is in our iceberg analogy here. And that complexity increases exponentially if you're running on a national or international scale. So across the whole of your business, you might need to concern yourself with multiple regions, understanding whether what you're looking at is in a rural versus urban location, different store brands, different suppliers, and each of these might have different requirements that you're looking at. And as you combine all of these different attributes or things that you might be interested in, you'll end up with a vast array of different kinds of rules and combinations and conditions that you might need to tailor to each combination. And when you have this kind of matrix or different combinations that you're putting in place, you really start to need the domain expertise in your business to be able to give you input. And you need those local experts who are familiar with the store, the customer, or the region, whatever you're looking at, to figure out the appropriate actions to take based on the data that you have. And on top of that, your business conditions are continuously changing. So this might mean that the action that was appropriate for some set of conditions yesterday might not be the same set of conditions or actions or appropriate actions that you would take today. And that means that you can't use a one-size-fits-all solution for your action as an action plan for your business. And you'll need to be able to tailor your solution and action plan at a more fine-grained level and get continuous input from those local domain experts. So now we're going to look at this basic maturity model for timely action on data. And the way this is how we're thinking about it. So imagine taking all the data in your business, and for each kind of data that you have, maybe it falls into one of these 3 buckets. So the bucket on the left is for data that maybe you're not taking any kind of proactive action on. So maybe you do take action on it, but it's only in a reactive manner. And an example of that might be when a customer complains about a problem with an order. So you have to go through that your order data to track down the information you need to resolve the problem. Then if we move to the middle bucket here, this is more for data that you can start to act on proactively using a manual method of detecting the need for action. So an example of this could be that you have some data that sits within a Power BI dashboard, and someone in your business might be continuously monitoring that dashboard to detect when you need to act. And then in the bucket on the right, this is around data that you're maybe automatically acting on. So you're using some kind of automation to detect when you need to act. And this could be through some sort of solution like if you have an alert set in place, and if we're going back to your Power BI dashboard, maybe you have a data alert set on it. Or it could be something that's more sophisticated, like you have something embedded in your business systems and it works without having humans in the loop. And usually when we speak to customers, we hear that you might have data that is in some or all 3 of these buckets. But in each of these buckets, there are different challenges that come up. So if your business doesn't act on the data, then you risk with dealing with problems reactively, and only when it's too late and this problem has snowballed into a bigger issue. And so that might mean that you risk missing valuable opportunities. And when there's a manual solution that is put in place, it can be quite labor intensive, and it also can be difficult to scale for some of the reasons that we mentioned earlier. But then if you have an automated system where it's probably managed by like your IT department, you risk having your IT department become this bottleneck where it makes it harder to be more agile. So maintaining this automated solution as your business continuously grows and changes can be challenging to maintain. And so businesses find themselves in a challenging place where you can put solutions in for acting proactively, but you start to have to choose between having a decentralized and manual process or something that's more centralized and automated, but both of these have challenges as we just ran through. And so we see this unmet need today, and businesses have these systems of intelligence for collecting and analyzing and visualizing their data, and that might be through Power BI or Synapse. And then on the right side, you might have some kind of system of action, which spans the range of using email, your Teams chats, or doing things through Power Automate. But the issue is that you don't have a solution for bridging the gap between these two things. And this gap is a second step of generating action. And it's in the ability to detect the need to act and do so at a high level of scale and granularity. And so what we're presenting today is this new solution to fix or to address this problem. And Reflex is this system of detection. It basically empowers your domain experts at the right level of your business to be able to define triggers for acting on business intelligence. And it does this by giving your business subject matter experts a solution that will work across all your data in the Microsoft Cloud. And it should be flexible enough so that your domain experts can continuously refine and enhance the triggers as your business grows and changes. But it should also be scalable, so you can act at the level of the individual entity or the individual level that you are interested in monitoring your data. And so our target user here and what we're hoping this can help is to help the business user who might not be a technical person through this no-code solution that is accessible for anybody across your organization to use. So if we go back to that maturity model with the 3 buckets, what we're basically proposing is adding in this solution, this no-code solution on the right, where you have this more distributed system where you have individual people who are able to make these changes and iterate at the level that they need. And if we were to apply this idea to Microsoft products itself, here you can basically see that on the left, you have your data maybe in OneLake or Power BI or Synapse, and you can bring it into Data Activator, which is the gap that we're proposing today. And you can create models, rules, and triggers to be able to then execute an action that is carried out through Teams, Outlook, Power Automate, or whatever custom action that you might have in mind. Then, just to give you an idea, this all also sits within the Microsoft Fabric platform here. And so you can get an experience, a seamless experience for working with your data on the Microsoft Cloud. So I know we just went through a lot of information and talking about the product itself. So now I want to go into a demo where we can show you a little bit more about how this works in practice. And today we're going to be going through our bikes and docking stations scenario. So in this scenario, we're going to be looking at the bikes and docking stations in London. You can find these bikes basically in many different large cities across the world. And the way it works, if you're not familiar with them, is that you have these rental bikes that are at different docking stations. And somebody can go up to a docking station. They can unlock a bike using an app, and then they can use it for the journey that they might have, go from point A to B. And then they can drop it off at another docking station in another location somewhere else in the city and just continue on with their day. And in particular, we're using the data from these bikes in London because they're operated by this organization called Transport for London. And they make the data available through an API that shows you all the streets around London, all the docking stations, and how many bikes there are and how many open spots there are at any given time. And so what we're going to do in this scenario is that we're basically going to take that data, bring it into Data Activator, and track the volume of bikes that are available and see how many spaces there are, and then make sure that that's somehow kind of evenly distributed across the city, so that any customer who comes up and wants to use a bike, they can be sure that there is a bike available for them. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch over to my demo here. But where we're actually going to start is in event streams over here. So event streams is another item type that you can find in Fabric. The team that looks after it basically manages streaming events and streaming messages between different systems. But basically what I've done here is that I've connected to my docking station API. And then I basically brought that into Fabric, where I have my docking station events, and then I can push it out to different destinations. And that destination could be, a Custo database or a Data Activator reflex item or some other endpoint that you might have. And then at the bottom of the screen here, I have this preview of my data where I can see my data in a grid. And these are basically the events that are being pulled in and then are being pushed into a couple of different places. And I also just want to call out the reason why we also call them reflexes is that the idea is we want to build some kind of like digital nervous system for your business. And if you think about the stimulus response that is going on within a person's body, as these reflexes are happening, it's about listening for stimuli and then quickly taking an action in an automatic way. So what I'm doing in this case is that I chose to push this data into a new reflex destination and created a reflex item for it. And that's symbolized by the little lightning bolt that you can see here. So now that I have it all hooked up in the way that I want the data to be flowing, I'm going to move over to my reflex item here. I'm just going to hit refresh on it really quickly so you can see how some of the data arrives into my reflex item. But basically, on the left here, you can see that I have my docking station events. That's the one event stream that I have as my source here. On the main part of this canvas, I can see at the top a table of my data. The rows that you see that are flashing in green are basically the new events that are coming in. So from this, you can see how my new data is arriving and each new row that has come in through event streams. There's also this button that says Get Data, where if you want to pull in data from other streams, you can also do that. But I'm just going to stick with my one event stream that I have here today. At the bottom, you can also see this visual of an event count. So it's basically telling you the number of events that come in every 5 minutes. And you can see that visualized and the count that's come in. And then over here, I also have this time picker where basically I'm looking at my data over the time range of the last 4 hours. But if I wanted to, I could also change that and modify it to be the time range that I'm interested in this case. So if I scroll through my data a bit, just to make sure that this is the data I wanted to use or I'm interested in, you can see the timestamp of the data here. I have my streets associated here, neighborhoods, latitude, longitude, etc. Because we're also interested in looking at the number of empty slots, I want to make sure that my empty slot count is here. So I have that column available. And if I am interested, you can also see that there's this ingestion timestamp available to me. So now that I've verified that this is the data I wanted and that it's flowing through and this is what I'm looking at, what I'm going to do now is that I basically need to decide what object I want to track. So what I need to do is that I'm going to specify the object that I want, the conditions of what I'm looking for, and then the action I want to take. But to do that, I'm going to specify, the object in the thing that I'm interested in particular is understanding my docking stations. So I'm just going to give that the name of docking stations. I'm going to choose a key column to associate it with, and that'll be my bike point ID. This is basically, the key column is the thing that uniquely identifies one of these docking stations. So that's my bike point ID that I'm going to be filling in here. And then the next thing I'm going to do is also assign different properties on top of it. And basically, this might be any attribute or thing that I might want to use inside of my business logic. So I'm going to take my bike count, my empty bike count. I can add in whatever I think might be useful to me here. And so I'm just going to hit save. And you can see that there are a couple of options here. One is to save and go to design mode. Another one is save and create another object if there is another object that I'm interested in. But for today, I'm just going to save this and then move on to my next step towards my next step in creating my triggers and what I want to monitor. Okay, so now that I've been brought into the design mode here, I can see a view of my events. Basically, I am looking at my events and I can see when I can see a sample of my data. In this population picker, you can see that it's showing me 5 out of 120 of the bike point IDs that are available. And part of the reason why we do this is if I were to display all 120 IDs in this chart, it would be impossible to try to make sense of it. And so what we do is we give you a sample of the different bike points so that you can start to understand and look at the events for those individual bikes, just to give you an idea of how each one might individually run. And on top of that, I can also, again, change my time selector if I wanted to in this case. So that's the page that we have first landed on. But I also wanted to point out that if I go to this left nav, that docking station object that I just created is showing up here, and that's symbolized by this little cube, and we have the docking station label that I created. And then underneath the properties heading here, you can see all the different attributes that I decided to add to it, which was bike count, my empty slot count, neighborhood, and street. So that's how the information that I just put in has translated over to this design mode that I have here. If I wanted to, I could also go and look at my different properties. So in this case, if I wanted to better understand my bike count, I can see then, again, another sample of my my bike count across the different bike points that I have. So this might help me better understand the attributes that I have and try to start to look at a subset of that data and better understand it. So what I'm gonna do, what I'm gonna do next is that I'm actually gonna try to start to create a trigger, and I'm going to go through some of that logic to be able to monitor the data that I am interested in. So I'm going to hit my new trigger button here. And basically it takes me to this page where I can see some prompts about how I can start to figure out what to monitor and what to look at. So in this case, I'm gonna select my property that I'm interested in. So I'm gonna look at my bike count, and it's going to show me a visual of how my bike count looks over time. And again, the sample of my my data here. And because we're looking at this data over time, sometimes depending on what your data might be, it could be fluctuating a lot. It could be up and down and all over the place over a period of time if you're getting a lot of events per second. And so what I might want to do, or what can be available to you, is that you can also look for ways to either smooth out your data or kind of do this data prep step where, let's say you want to filter some of your data according to a particular value, or if you're dealing with temperature, for example, or to a different, a particular location. Or you could also summarize your data to smooth out some of the bumpiness that you see here. So if, for example, I wanted to average my bike count over time, I could select that, and I can smooth out my data, and I could also change that that time window over which it is averaging my bike count. Then the next thing that I want to do is specify the condition of what I am looking for and would like to detect. So in this detect card, this is basically a library of different conditions that we are building over time. So there are a number of different ones that you can choose from. You can start from numeric, where it might be something like tracking when a number changes by a certain amount or changes by a certain percentage. There are things like when it enters a range or exits a range, is greater than, is less than, etc. Or even when things, when new data arrives or new data doesn't arrive. And just to call out, there are also different kinds of numeric conditions you might want to track, like when something becomes greater than, which might mean crossing over a threshold, versus when you want to look at something in a particular range. So paying attention to what exactly is the condition or the part of your trigger that you want to be able to monitor or get some kind of feedback on is important here. There's some different logical detectors as well, where you can evaluate when something is true or false, or when something changes to or from equal, not equal. But basically, this is a set of conditions that we have built out, and we're also continuing to build this out as well. So if there are particular things that you think in your organization you might want to track, you definitely share that, and that's something that we're continuing to build and grow. So in this case, what I'm going to do is that since I want to track when there are too few when there are too few empty spots at my docking stations, I'm going to use the becomes less than condition here. And what you can see here is that I can decide what this threshold is. So right now it's currently set to, I want to know when the docking station has less than 0 empty slots, but that doesn't really make sense for the context of the scenario that we're working on. So I can start to increase the number of empty slots that I care about, or my bike count, or excuse me, because I'm looking at my bike count, I can decide how many bikes I decide is too few at my docking station and try to monitor on that. So as you change your threshold around, you'll also get a response in these visuals that can show you, okay, based on this sample of data that we gave you earlier for particular bike points you might be interested in, what do the different events look like as they come in? You can also see as you created these conditions, you can see how your trigger might be activated according to the condition that you have set. So if I increase this, then the trigger activations might change accordingly if there are more events that show that. If I wanted to as well, I could also create some kind of filter around these bike conditions as well, if I wanted to have a particular range and such set there. But for the purposes of this, there's also some additional kind of capabilities that might have. So let's say that I care about when the number of bikes becomes less than 5, but I also want to track if that number stays less than 5 for a certain amount of time. Because let's say I have someone who's riding a bike and they drop off their bike, and they take the bike, but then the number drops less than 5. But then someone else comes along and drops their bike off and the number goes back up to 5, then I might not care about redistributing across my different bike points because the number has gone back over to 5. So I might want to track when that bike count becomes lower than 5 over a period of time to ensure, okay, this is an issue that has been there for a while. So let's say I want to make sure that it's the case and it stays that way for 10 minutes, and you can also change that accordingly to your trigger conditions there as well. So now that I've set my conditions on my trigger here, we can move on to the act step. So this is basically the action that I want to be performed after detection has happened. So there's a number of different things you can do. One is you can get email notification, you can do get a Teams message, or create an ICM incident, or something called a custom action. Basically, with custom actions, you can use Power Automate to also create actions on top of that. And so you have a lot of different capabilities available to you in terms of what kind of action you want to be carried out. But in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have it send me a Teams message to let me know if my condition has been met here. And so you can see that I have this in the recipients. It's all automatically going to put me in there because I'm the one who's creating it, but you can send it to any number of recipients that you are interested in. And I can also change my headline here and say something like not enough bikes at, and then something else I could even do is if I want to say, okay, there's not enough bikes at a particular location or a particular street, since I'm monitoring across all my different bike point locations, I can also use this little tag button and fill it in with one of the properties I had earlier. So I can say, okay, I want this notification I get to tell me when there's not enough bikes on a particular street. And so you can have that be dynamic content that's filled in your messages automatically. And this might be something that is really important to people who have particular like experts or particular people who are in charge of either different locations or different bike points, etc. So you can have that dynamic content update. And so what I'm going to do now that I've set up my my trigger and condition and all looks good, I'm also just going to give it my trigger a name and just say no empty slots. I'm going to name, that's how I'm going to name my trigger here. And if I wanted to, I can send myself a test alert. And we'll see how this responds. But basically, since I have decided to send myself a Teams message, I can get a message from this built-in Data Activator app that I have in Teams. And if you just saw that pop in, it's telling me, okay, there are enough bikes at Guildhouse Street. So there you have it. That's how my trigger might run itself. And this is this also lets me know that this is the test action that I'm getting. On top of that, if let's say after doing all these steps and looking at my test alert, I can then decide to start my trigger and start to get alerts and have it actually send out alerts based on the data that I have. So that's kind of an end-to-end look at how you might bring in your data into Data Activator and then start to build your different objects that you care about, and then build the triggers with the exact conditions that you care about to then get an action or to then setting an action on top of it and have the conditions that you care about and be able to monitor on top of your data here. But I know that not everybody is starting from a point where they might have this real-time data or this event streams data. So to show you, there's something else that is available to you in terms of you being able to use Data Activator as this monitoring tool. But let's say that I'm using a Power BI report. So I have this Power BI report that's basically my docking station report. It tells me across my different neighborhoods in London what the occupancy rate is, number of docking stations, etc. But what I can do in this case to leverage the same kind of monitoring tool and setting conditions is that I can decide to set an alert on my visuals here. So I can either do that within the ribbon of my my report here, or I can also go to the visual that I care about and go to the little context menu on top of it. And then I can also click set alert here. And when I click that, basically this side pane opens up, and this is how you can set and monitor a condition on your Power BI reports and Power BI visuals. So if I wanted to, I can look at how my visuals already set up, some of the measures and conditions that are already in place. But let's say that I'm interested in understanding the occupancy rate, and I want to know when the threshold is actually becomes greater than 60% instead. I can set that. I can decide again if I want an email or a Teams notification. I can also decide where exactly I want to have that item saved, and then I can basically decide if I want to create a new reflex item for this. And there's also this switch to be able to just start my alert right away or not. But I'm just going to go ahead and leave this start my alert check marked, and then I'm going to hit create alert. So I get this little toaster notification that tells me, okay, now my trigger is being added to my workspace. It's creating my reflex in the background for me right now. And so it's taking all this information that we just put in and has created my alert. And so now that my alert is created, it's telling me, okay, great, you can basically view this alert that you have created. So if I hit that, then I actually get sent over to this new reflex item that I have created. And while it's loading, you can basically see that the condition that I have just created has actually been is now fully populated within a reflex item that you have created here. So basically, this is another way to be able to leverage Data Activator and create reflexes on top of some of the artifacts that you might already have, like a Power BI report. And if I wanted to go through and make adjustments to this, I could basically go through and take the same steps as I did earlier to either, add more summarizations or filters on top of my data and be able to change the conditions here. So that's just another great way that you can see that you can leverage a Data Activator in this. So here are a couple of different those are a couple different ways that you can use it. I'm also going to move back over to my PowerPoint here. And basically, just wanted to give you a list of the different kinds of key benefits that you can have from using Data Activator. It really gives you a way to empower people within your organization to be able to set the conditions that they might care about, and they might be the knowledgeable experts to be able to create these conditions and triggers to monitor data on. It gives you this interactive feedback and helps you understand what is going on in your events and the data that you have to then be able to take action upon it immediately. And on top of that, the idea is that as you continue down your path with the Data Activator, that this is something that will grow with your needs. You might start with just creating threshold alerts on your charts, but there are different ways that you can start to enable it in your organization as you think about how your capabilities might become increasingly complex and how you might use it within your organization itself. In terms of what's next or ways that you might be able to stay connected, you can check out some additional resources at the first link here. You can also connect with the Data Activator community as well. And so these are different ways that you can get in touch. You can definitely get in touch with me and Rony as well, but we're still early in our journey with Data Activator here. And so if you are interested or have any questions, there are definitely different ways that you can get connected with others and with the team to better understand how this might be enabled in your own organization, and you can leverage this. Then I think now we have some time for questions then.
Is there admin view for all the Data Activators in the organization?
When you say, go ahead.
I was going to just take that up. I think right now, if you go to an artifact, you see all of the triggers that were created as part of that artifact. We are working towards something where Fabric has a notion of a monitoring hub, which is essentially the place where we think you get this holistic view across everything that is running, any activity that is running, right? So that could be a pipeline running, any of that. So we have plans to at least be able to showcase all of the triggers that are running in that monitoring pane. So that's something that we are working towards. And there's also some additional plans to also have notifications set up so that you can get alerted when something goes wrong with the trigger. So for example, the trigger stops running for any number of reasons, you can get notified of that.
John is just kind of asking about the what is the difference, I guess, with Power Automate? Can't Power Automate do the same things?
Rony, you want to go for that?
Yeah. So we get this question a lot. Like, this looks very similar to Power Automate, or some folks compare it to Logic Apps. There are a lot of similarities, and I would point out a few things that we believe makes us slightly different. One is, if you look at the experience that Tessa walked us through, it's very much a starting point where we assumed zero sophistication with code, right? So it's purely a no-code UI. The other thing that I would say is we really think of this from a scale perspective to scale up to think of the fleet that you're monitoring, right? We have had cases where customers want to monitor individual households, oil wells, a fleet of trucks. If we think of these use cases at the extreme right, where that scale is really, really large, right? You can think of 100,000 things sending out some sort of update about whatever it is. It could be power meters, like electricity meters. So the scale is the second thing. And think of also the richness of what you can describe as a condition, right? So it's no longer whether there's a file in a SharePoint or you got an email. It's really doing a lot of combinations on things coming together and then expressing some computation that you can do on top of that to say, I want that specific condition to be met, right? So it gives you a lot of flexibility from that. So customers actually like that too. So there are similarities with Power Automate and Logic Apps, but we think those 3 dimensions give it a very different set of use cases that we can target.
Tutu commented as well from his perspective, seamless integration with Power BI does encourage adoption. I think that's
yeah.
Oh, and then he's asking, can you talk a little bit more about licensing?
Yeah, I assume that's I'm going to take that too. Okay, so so Fabric as a whole has the same notion as Power BI, where you have capacities and then everything that you did drew from the capacity, right? So Fabric kind of inherits that and says, okay, let's continue that. So the only thing at a Fabric level that is different is there are SKUs that are lower in capacity resources. So if you don't necessarily need a P1 or something, there's Fabric capacities that are lower in the amount of resources that it has. So it allows you to scale down a little bit. But we snap to that same notion, and every workload within Fabric, whether that be data warehouse, data science, data engineering, Power BI, and even us as Data Activator, essentially draws from that same capacity that the workspace is attached to, right? So we end up being something else that draws from that same capacity. So from that perspective, it's the same thing. So everything that is considered Fabric, which is the workloads that are new outside of Power BI, requires you to have either a Fabric capacity or a Power BI premium capacity. That's at least the way we think about it today. So you think of a workspace, it has to be attached to a Power BI premium capacity or a Fabric capacity. We also support Fabric trial capacities, right? So we want users and customers to actually go look at all the additional functionality that we're bringing in addition to Power BI and say, how does it all fit into my organization? What benefits can I derive from it? So there is a notion of getting a trial capacity and experimenting with all of that and figuring out what benefits do you get. So so think of capacities and snap to that. The only difference is, in addition to, I think Power BI premium capacities were P1 through P5, if I remember correctly. We have a much wider spectrum that allows you to go beyond what the upper end of Power BI was and also scale down at the lower end. Any limits based on SKU level, that is lowest SKUs. I think there's a few of them that I don't remember off the top where we need a certain amount of capacity to make sure that we can, in a performant way, deliver that. I don't think there's anything in Data Activator, but there may be other workloads that require a certain type or a certain level of capacity, because from a pure performance standpoint, you need that amount of capacity to render that feature, right? So think of the more compute intensive features, they may actually require a certain type of capacity. I don't remember what, I think it's documented somewhere. Just don't remember that off the top of my head.
Great questions, everybody.
Thank you.